people who have gone through this, right? And that became the response. We know, I don't think most everyone in this room, the temple knows, that the response to every single thing, to Gabriel's point earlier, was incarceration. Substance issues, mental health, whatever it may be. Prison is the response. Prison is the response. Lock it up, lock it up, lock it up. Nothing goes away, nothing changes. And we continue to do that. And so we created programs inside Bedford Hills where we can address those things. We could give ourselves those things that no one, bothered to even think that we deserved or should have. And so it was through that time I started opening up and sharing. And then I started realizing, oh my God, there's so many stories that are so similar to mine. So, as a child, you feel like you're alone in the hurt, in the pain, and everything that's going on, right? You feel that everything that happens is your fault. The sun doesn't shine today, it's my fault because I'm a bad person, and that's why this happens to me. That's how we think as children. And we start owning everything. And before we realize it, everything that someone's done to us, no matter who, systemically or whatever, is our fault. We hold it. So now we wonder why people snap. We wonder why. But we have a prison, or prisons filled with human beings who've gone through this and continue, because prison and jails in themselves are violent. But the key thing here is poverty is violence. Poverty is violent. You have prisons and jails that are filled with people, to Gabriel's point again, that are.
So, institutionally again, let me tell you some of the lessons I feel like I've learned in this campaign. So one, before we were doing this at Trinity, if you had asked me how a church can engage issues like this, I would say we can preach, we can teach. That's really what we can do. It's what churches know how to do. And I would have been very much on the policy side of things. Like, we can work for change in that way. Part of what I learned at Trinity is, and we talked about this in our preparation, is that you can make policy change, you can get the law passed. It doesn't mean there's any capacity to do anything about that in the system, right? That kept happening in New York. Like, we raised the age, there was no money to move those kids off Rikers. So because we were a funder, we could fund, we would be approached about that and could fund all the administrative sides to get, there were other steps, basically. So what I would have thought is a values-driven Christian institution, right, a faith institution, was the end of the game, was not the end of the game. And what I thought we could do institutionally, where our power was really narrow. I was wrong. So one of the things I learned is to understand your institutional connections, who you are, what your institution is, what the kind of the power analysis of your institution. Who are your people? Where do they work? What do they care about? How do you get them engaged because of who they are, not just because of the philosophical piece? So for us, we had a bunch of lawyers. We had people in big firms, wonderful Christian people who had never thought about how cash bail worked. And they would say that after a sermon.
2022 comes to a close. We look now at one of the most alarming developments this year: how more jails in the United States are becoming death traps, where people face inhumane conditions in overcrowded facilities. New data show New York City jails are the deadliest in more than a quarter of a century. 19 people died in city custody or shortly after being released, and severe understaffing at the notorious Rikers Island jails has been linked to several suicides, as officials are now predicting the population to balloon in coming years, even as the city faces a mandate to shut Rikers down by 2027. Meanwhile, in DeKalb, Georgia, officials report 2 people died from hanging this week in less than 24 hours, making this the deadliest year in the jail's history. In Houston, Texas, the Harris County Jail has seen a record 27 deaths.